It was a crazy night of college hockey here at the Ingalls Rink in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm Jonathan Banks, he's M.J. Baird, and we're here to break it all down for you. Quinnipiac came into Ingalls here and defeated the Yale Bulldogs 4-1. They handled their business. What we do know is that Quinnipiac will be the #1 seed in the ECAC hockey tournament. So let's talk about that. Let's get to the game in a little bit, but tell me how the Bobcats earned the top seed in the conference.
Yeah, well, you're right, Jonathan. Quinnipiac did what it needed to do. It won, but it also got the help that it needed. If you watched any of our pregame content from the past couple of days, you knew that Quinnipiac needed help from Cornell. Cornell was 1 point ahead of Quinnipiac coming into this game, and they were playing Clarkson tonight. So the Bobcats needed Cornell to either lose or tie that game. Well, comes down to the final minute of regulation. Clarkson scores to force overtime. Ultimately, the two end in a tie. That leaves both Quinnipiac and Cornell with 30 points in the league, so they are co-regular season champions. But as you mentioned, Quinnipiac is getting that #1 seed because they win the tiebreaker. The first tiebreaker is head-to-head. They split one. They each won a game this year, but it's the second tiebreaker wins where Quinnipiac gets the advantage. Bobcats have 14, and the Golden Knights only had 13 this year.
Yeah, so Quinnipiac gets the #1 seed after all of what you just mentioned. But now let's head to the game at hand, and that took place behind us here today in New Haven, where Quinnipiac won 4-1. So Quinnipiac, they came out, they dominated. They had a 12-2 shot advantage in the first period. They're really pouring it on, just like they did when the two teams played in Hamden. But in the second period, it got chippy, it got physical, and that's where things really took a turn.
Yeah, look, Quinnipiac and Yale, they're arch rivals, so you expect the game to be heated, but not as heated as it got today. We saw a total of 3 disqualification penalties, and you don't see very many of those, never mind in a game, but in a season. So let's take you through them real quick. The first one went to Quinnipiac captain Chase Prisky. In the second period, there's a scrum in front of the net, in front of Andrew Shortridge, and Prisky tries to get the opposing player off of his goaltender, but as you can see here, his right leg kind of swings into the chest of the Yale player there. So the refs ultimately review this play, and they decide they're going to give him a DQ for kicking. So that, not necessarily a good look, especially from the Bobcats captain. Now, you will see in that video, too, that the player was bleeding. However, if you look at it more closely, the skate was more to the chest area of the Yale player, and he was bleeding from the chin. So very unlikely that the kick is actually what cut the player. So you definitely keep that in mind, but not to discount the penalty at all. And with a DQ in the NCAA comes a 1-game suspension. So Prisky's going to miss the first playoff game for the Bobcats. Well, a little while later, we saw a matching pair of disqualifications, this time for fighting. Again, it happened in front of the Bobcats net, a Yale player on top of Andrew Shortridge, and Luke Shiplow didn't take too kindly to that. He went right after Anthony Walsh, and as you can see here, a couple punches thrown both ways. The refs are going to decide on fighting for both of them. So again, both of them are also going to get DQs and 1-game automatic suspensions. And look, for all of these DQs we just mentioned, the league could decide to toss more onto that if they want. They could make it a 2 or 3 game suspension if they really wanted to. Depends on the severity, and we'll have to leave that up to them. But look, Quinnipiac is going to be depleted defensively. Prisky and Shiplow are both defenders. Mind you, they've already lost Fortunato for the year to injury, so here's what their D-core looks like coming into their first-round playoff series. Brogan Rafferty, Peter Deliberatore, Cam Boudreau, Carlos Chuksta, Zach Metza. Those are all players who played tonight. Then you're looking at Marcus Shorney, who hasn't played much this season at all, I believe 1 game. Yeah. And then Joe O'Connor, who's a forward, but listed on the line chart as a defenseman. He can play back if the Bobcats need him to. Look, it's going to be tough for Pecknell. He's going to have a decision to make. But to go back to where it all began, he has 2 weeks to make the decision because Quinnipiac has a first-round bye.
We'll see what happens with Quinnipiac's defense. Meanwhile, you can check out all of our highlights and post-game content on Q30TV.com. For MJ Baird, I'm Jonathan Banks. Quinnipiac takes this one 4-1 in New Haven. We'll see you next time.